Welcome back to another round, Basis Picks. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, associate, enemy, any and all in between. All appreciated. There's 3 cards on this weekend. You might not even know that there's 3 cards on this weekend, but there are. What I'm going to do, I'm literally going to fly through each of them. Going to give them all their own segment, speak very briefly on each card, the fights that interest me on each one, and we will see how quickly we kind of get this one wrapped up. So without further ado, let's get on to the first card, which is the matchroom card taking place in Monte Carlo, Monaco, France. Okay, so first fight up is Julissa Guzman versus Ramla Ali. This is a rematch from a bout that they had, which I believe took place in June. It was either May or June earlier this year, in which Ramla Ali suffered her first defeat and was brutally knocked out as a result. Now, in the first fight, Ramla Ali did have a lot of success in the first couple of rounds, but the pressure and I guess the punch power of Julissa Guzman was, I guess, a bit too much for her to handle. Ultimately, she made the mistake of trying to trade with the person that had the heavier hands rather than use her boxing skills. She, in the last couple of fights, she's been very much more on the front foot and active as opposed to being a boxer, and that might be maybe as a sign of obviously her training with Manny Robles, or it might just be a case of her wanting to get knockouts because she had a couple of knockouts prior, and I think maybe was starting to get in love with her power a little bit. In this case, she's now in the ring with someone that hits harder and that she probably can't really put too much of a dent in, but she can mark her up. Guzman did have several cuts and bumps and bruises in that fight. Now, Ramla Ali's best bet in this fight is ultimately to hit and move, 1 to 2 punches at a time, angle off, stop herself from being trapped into any corners. Don't exchange with Guzman. Whenever she gets into range, move laterally, move out of the way, or maybe make her swing and miss, then come back with a 1-2, back dip out again. The problem I think is going to come with this one is ultimately I don't think Ramla Ali is going to have the discipline to stay on that job for 10 rounds. She does have a bit of fight in her, and she is a person when she gets hit, she wants to return the favor, and I think that's going to be the thing that gets her caught again in this one. The last time I think she got knocked out in the 8th round. I think this one might actually be a little bit quicker. So I am actually predicting Guzman to repeat, and I do think that she will end up taking out Ramla Ali sort of, I think, between rounds 5 and 7. That's the prediction. We'll see how it goes. Moving on, we've got Solomon Sissoko. He is facing Asayas Lucerno. Now, I haven't seen anything of Lucerno, so I can't really make too much of a judgment on this one. I've got to give it nothing but a judgment call. I know Sissoko has, that real good amateur pedigree, plus he is a naturally bigger guy coming from obviously 154, is now competing at 147. From what I remember, I think Lucerno is a slightly smaller guy naturally, so I feel like Sissoko will have the slight size advantage in this fight. He's got the boxing fundamentals. He's been out of the ring for over a year, so that could obviously become a bit of an issue, a bit of ring rust. He was injured as well, so coming back from injury is never really the greatest position to be in, but I do think he will manage to see out this challenge and keep climbing up those WBC rankings. This is for his WBC silver title at welterweight, so I expect him to be able to get a number 2 ranking off the back of this one, as he is number 3. I do think he will win the fight, and I'm going to predict him to win on points. Again, that's pretty much based on nothing but just knowing what he's like as a fighter. Now, the co-main or the chief support of this one is to me is a really good fight with Sivangani Nonshinga against Adrian Curiel. Now, Nonshinga, this is taking place at light flyweight. Nonshinga is one of probably the most exciting light flyweights in the world at the moment. He's one of the most exciting guys in those divisions down there. He's got some very credible wins over real sort of top name contenders. If you know anything about sort of those flyweight divisions, you'll know that he's quite adept down there. and he's just getting better and better. Now in his, I don't know if it was the last fight or the fight before that, I remember he won the fight and it ended up getting rushed to hospital for I think it was some kind of illness or dehydration. He went into the fight ill, managed to win the fight, and then I think collapsed backstage or something. So he's a tough guy. He's a very tough guy, and like I said, very action packed. And he's basically got, at this point, the whole of South Africa on his back, because he's the only reigning champion that they have over there. Now Curiel is like a very busy fighter. He's just a guy, he looks to swarm, he does look to sort of collapse distance, get on the inside, throw punches in bunches, and just make things a very uncomfortable night. But I do feel like Nonshinga's got the better boxing fundamentals, the better technique, and I think that if it comes down to it, he's got the toughness to grit it out as well. I actually am predicting the Nonshinga will get a late stoppage in this. I'm thinking between rounds 9 to 11. I do think he will manage to get Curiel out of there, but it's not going to be an easy task. That being said, it's going to be a very exciting fight. I'm looking forward to watching it. Now, last but not least, we've got Joe Cordina against Edward Vasquez. Now, Vasquez is basically a guy who's kind of more come from the featherweight division. He's a smaller guy by trade. He's coming up to super feather. Everyone knows Joe Cordina was campaigning at lightweight before, so he's got the obvious size advantage. You look at the two of them, there's about 3 inches height difference between them. Joe is just like the naturally bigger guy, but Vasquez is a very busy swarmer, and he likes to sort of stay on the chest, keep working, and make you have to work. Now, I do know that in that Matchroom gym, they are very meticulous on you being having strong endurance. So I know that Joe will be trained to a point that he can go around at pace if need be. Vasquez does not have the power to trouble him, but that doesn't mean obviously he can't punch, and that if you allow him a free punch, you won't suffer the consequences as a result of that. But ultimately, I think that Joe Cordina, as he knows that he's got 2 very, very big money fights on the horizon, should he get through this, he's not the type of person I feel like is going to slip at the final hurdle before those big money fights come. And for that, I think he's going to almost box within himself, do enough that he secures a very, very wide points victory, but not enough that he's going to put himself in the line of fire and potentially get clipped with something, or put himself in a position to maybe get a cut or something like that, which prevents him from being able to keep to the schedule he wants moving forward. So for that particular reason, I do predict that Joe Cordina will win this fight, and he will win it via a fairly wide points decision. I'm thinking a 117-111 type job, 118-110. I mean, there's a chance of a late stoppage in there, but ultimately I think it's going points, but I think it's going to be fairly comfortable, with enough action that people aren't complaining that it was a dud fight at the end of it. Okay, so that's the end of the Matchroom card. Going to move over now to the Top Rank card, which is taking place over in the States. Okay, so this Top Rank card is pretty stacked from top to bottom, but I haven't got time to go through every single fight, nor do I know every single fighter that's on it, but I do know enough to know that, yeah, if I was in the States and I had access to the entire card, I'd probably be very happy. But we're gonna go, I think, just for maybe the top 4. We'll go for the top four fights. So the first one will be Lindolfo Delgado against Luis Hernandez Ramos. I'm not even going to spend too much time on this one. Lindolfo Delgado is a very special talent. I'm expecting KO. I'm not even going to really go into too much more than that. I believe that he is the type of, he's basically the type of person that is going to be a part of that who needs him club, unless he's got a belt around his waist as a bargaining tool. Like, that's the kind of talent we're looking at. So I am expecting a KO there in around sort of between rounds 5 and 8. Moving up, we've got what's his name, Henry LeBron against William Foster III. Now that's a fight, 2 unbeatens. I think LeBron is 18-0, and I think William Foster III is 16-0, or they could be the other way around. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head, but that fight is going to be, I feel like it's going to be a very tactical battle. That's going to be all about who can control center ring, who can who can position their shots outside the arc of vision of the opponent, who's going to be able to get shots off first and sort of get back to their defensive stances prior to the opponent trying to retaliate. I don't see it being much of a catch and shoot type fight, but there's going to be, I feel like, a lot of tactical battles between the two. Both have the same amount of knockouts. I believe it's 10 knockouts apiece. So when it comes to power, it's respectable power, but it's not power that you're gonna necessarily worry about unless like you're really sort of tired and gassed or you've been broken down. So with this one, I'm gonna go a little bit against the grain, and I'm actually gonna pick William Foster III to eke out a points decision. I'm not sure if it will be unanimous or split or even majority, but I do think he will get the decision. I think he's got just a little bit more quality overall over Henry LeBron, and yeah, that's pretty much how I see that one going. Now, I think the chief support of this one is supposed to be Raymond Muratalla against Diego Torres Nunes. Now, with this one, Muratalla, I don't even really need to go into too much about it. Like, they're both 18-0. I think Nunes has got the higher KO percentage, but I don't think he's been in there with, to me, my opinion, like the same standard of competition, the same building competition as Muratalla. Now, that being said, look, it's going to be a very, very hard fight, but I do think it will end. I don't think it ends in a knockout. I think this one goes points, and I think Muratalla takes it on points as well. Not comfortable, but enough where it's a clear sort of points decision. Moving on finally to the main event today, you got Efe Ajagba versus Joseph Goodall. Now, Joseph Goodall, for most people who don't know, is like an Australian heavyweight. I'm trying to remember who he fought in his last fight, which is the reason he got this one. He had a good it was a good performance against Stephen Shaw. That's it, because I remember it was Stephen Shaw and Efe Ajagba prior to that. So Goodall came in, was supposed to be Shaw's rebound. He sort of basically flipped the script on that and said, no, we're not doing that, and he actually knocked out Stephen Shaw. So he now gets this opportunity to face Efe Ajagba. Now, one thing Ajagba does fairly well at the moment, he does seem to employ a fairly good jab. Like, his footwork isn't great. He's got a very strong right hand, but he doesn't really employ it the way he used to. Ever since he got caught and countered by Frank Sanchez, he seemed to be a lot more hesitant with that backhand. But he does have the natural advantages over Joseph Goodall. He's got the height, he's got the reach, he's got the length advantage. So I feel as if in this fight, provided he sticks to what his coach says, plays to the game plan, Goodall has a chance to swarm him, but I feel like he will sort of keep it at range, keep it long behind the jab, try to control him behind the jab, set up that right hand, probably to the body at times, and I think he will be able to bust up Goodall enough that he's not able to really get to work himself. I think it's a 10-rounder, so it's ultimately I do think that Ajagba will win on points, and I'm sort of going for a unanimous points decision, but in maybe not that much of a convincing bout. I don't think it's going to be like a highlight performance from him, but I do think that he will do enough to secure it, probably 96, 94, 97, 93, that sort of scenario. But Goodall will have his moments in there, and the Ajagba does have to stay switched on at all times. Now, moving on to the final card to talk about, which is a Don King Promotions card, Shock Horror. But yeah, let's get into that one. Okay, so for this card, there's only 3 fights I really want to have any sort of conversation about. Yeah, put it this way, 3 fights, 2 of them are heavyweight, the other is cruiserweight, so at least it's, you know, sort of the big guys action, which a lot of us will be more interested in seeing. The first one is Jonathan Gudry against Jesus Escalera. Now Jesus Escalera is 19-0, 19 KOs. Jonathan Gudry is 19-1-2 with, I think, 11 KOs. But this Escalera, when you look at his record, you basically look at who he's been in the ring with. He's 43 years old, Puerto Rican southpaw, but he's not been in there with any name that you've heard at any point in the heavyweight division. So yeah, basically this to me is a fight that Jonathan Gudry is just being it's being used to promote his WBA ranking, so he can just get a higher ranking against a, you know, an unbeaten fighter. And Gudry is a person that, you know, for as small as he is, he's very short. He's like 5'11", 33, but he's a tough guy. And ultimately, I can see him actually getting a stoppage. When you see the level of competition of Escalera, you kind of know, yeah, this is a Christopher Lovejoy situation all over again, as far as I can see. So I do expect Gudry to get the KO, and I do expect it to be sort of mid to late rounds. I'm thinking sort of round 6, between sort of round 6 and 8. Right, so after that, now we've got Trevor Bryan against Cassius Chaney. And obviously, for those of you who should know, Trevor Bryan was an opponent of Daniel Dubois. That's the person Daniel Dubois won the WBA regular title off of back in June of last year. Now, prior to that, I had some I quite liked some of Trevor Bryan's like fundamentals. I felt like he had been way too inactive, put on way too much weight. But if you had actually looked at his movement and the way that he was, you know, sort of the way he would, you know, set up his punches, a lot of what he did was very sort of textbook correct, especially if you know, been in and around like those New York gyms. He had sort of a very much a New York sort of style. But as he got older, obviously got slower, got fatter. He did lose some weight for the Daniel Dubois fight, but I feel at that point maybe that took a bit away from his ability to absorb a shot. But yeah, he never really fulfilled the potential he could have. I know he was a person that Shannon Briggs at one point was very high on, but yeah, obviously that was, I think, prior to the pandemic. Now Cassius Chaney, on the other hand, this is a guy that I've known for a little while, to be fair. They both got, funny enough, they both got identical records. They are both 22-1, and they're both 15 KOs. The only difference is Cassius Chaney lost his fight via decision, whereas you know, Trevor Bryan lost his fight by KO. What I will say is, if you look at their level of competition, both guys have been in and around the same level, but I think that maybe Trevor Bryan has had a little bit more in way of like experience. I mean, look, he was in the ring with Berman Stavern, for whatever that's worth. Obviously he's got the Daniel Dubois defeat as well, whereas Cassius Chaney's defeat was to George Arias, who, while he was a sort of a really like good, compact, credible 6 foot heavyweight, he never really was at that higher level, or had been to the mountaintop or even anywhere near it. So I feel like Chaney's experience level will be a lot less than Trevor Bryan. But for some reason, I have a feeling, and I don't know where the feeling comes from, if I'm being totally honest, Trevor Bryan is supposed to win this fight and win it quite comfortably. But there's a sneaky suspicion that Cassius Chaney might pull this one off by decision. I do think it goes to the points, and yeah, ultimately, as much as I actually think Trevor Bryan is the better fighter, and I'm not surprised if he wins this, I would be like, well, obviously I should have picked him, because everything in my brain is telling me that he's the logical choice, but there's just something I'm not sure about at this point in time. And yeah, so I'm gonna go out on a limb here. This could be like, you know, the greatest stroke, or this could be like the most ignorant choice I've made in a long time, but I'm going for Cassius Chaney to win this one, and I'm going for him to win by way of points, probably a split decision. on a Don King card as well. I mean, look, the odds are very stacked against that, but hey, it's I'm allowed to have one a month, and this is gonna be my one. Right, outside of that, we've got it's Noel Gavor Mikhalkian against Ilunga Makabu, fighting for the vacant WBC Cruiserweight title. As you know, Ilunga Makabu lost that title last year, August, to Badu Jack, but Badu Jack has now vacated the title to move up to Bridgerweight to fight Lucas Rozansky. Guys, remember the guy who beat Alan Babich in a round back in April of this year for the Bridgerweight title. So because of that, Ilunga Makabu will be facing off against Noel Gavor, who at one point, I believe Noel Gavor was he was always a WBC. I was thinking for a minute he might have been the IBF, but he wasn't. He was WBC mandatory, and I think Badu Jack saw more opportunity in going up and winning another legit title against a guy of a similar age to him, because I think Noel Gavor is about 27, 28, so he's a much younger competitor. Now look, Makabu's always gonna have power. He's one of the strongest. He's always one of the strongest punchers in the cruiserweight division, but age has most definitely got to him at this point. I think they had him listed as 36 the other day, but yeah, he's much closer to early 40s, if not in sort of that range. So he looked very sort of, his legs didn't look good in the last fight. He looked very sort of cumbersome. He didn't look like he had good balance underneath him. Gavor is a lot more of a mover. He's a person that can sit in the pocket, but he likes to sort of pick shots from the outside, burrow his way into range, and sort of come behind very big sort of powerful arcing shots, occasionally straight shots as well. I can see this being a scenario whereby he basically just works over Ilunga Makabu, makes him tired, ultimately sort of makes him have to use those expired legs, work that balance, and then ultimately just catch that flurry down the back stretch and get that victory. I'm thinking actually there will be another sort of late stoppage. I'm predicting sort of round 11, sort of around 11, round 12 stoppage, where the ref sort of jumps in. It won't be like a devastating KO of such, but there will definitely, I see him stopping Ilunga Makabu and winning that WBC Cruiserweight title. So that's my predictions. Leave yours down below. Like, I know I've done a couple madness in this one, I won't lie, but sometimes you got to take risks, right? So yeah, we'll see how all of that sort of transpires. Let me know what you think down below, and for right now, Spaces Picks locked.